generations growing up, the new generation growing up with the web, think differently from other generations?
Well, it's clear that even people who have, like me, who started off without the web and now use it, work differently. When we want to think of something, we tend to often just reach for the keyboard because we have assumed that we can find stuff. Now, people say, I don't know, but that they've measured that people are not remembering so much.
I do think they think differently, and the real question, I think, is how much of that is normal human plasticity, right? We all are really good at responding to opportunities, and this young generation has different opportunities than my generation had. And how much of it is actually that their brains are being wired differently because of exposure to the media environment they're being exposed to. The first category is it's relatively easy to see examples of that. In the States right now, because we're very good at moral panics, people my age, mid-40s and up, are wringing their hands right over what kids are doing, teens are doing on Facebook. As if we would not have done those things had Facebook existed when we were young. And so we want to project this idea, well, I wasn't putting drunk pictures of myself up on Facebook. It's like, well, no one gave us the chance. But I remember us. I think we would have done that in a heartbeat if Facebook had been around. And so rather than, sitting around complaining about how young people have it better than us, which makes us look like old fogies, we decide instead that this is a threat to civilization and must be, must be addressed at once in the highest halls of power. That kind of, hypocrisy and lack of self-examination is always, alas, true of people
But as
my
we
age.
see what this generation looks like as it grows up with it, they're now a generation in retreat. They'll text, but they won't talk. One of the things that has been so, for somebody like me who does interviews and who believes in what you learn from the face, from the philosophers tell us that we become human when we're confronted with another face through the voice, through the inflection of the voice. These kids don't want to see a face. They don't want to see a voice. They want to text. So that in a way we're no longer nourished but consumed in some way by what we've created. And I think that's very, it's not all good.
I think one of the things that has happened to the first generation of kids to grow up always being online, which by the way are my kids. They have never experienced dial-up or anything like that. They've always had always on. And what I've seen is they have a global awareness that was not present in my generation. They really feel as if this is one world. They also feel as if they are always connected to everyone else. There is a feeling of being connected that I did not have in my generation. And I think the third thing is that there is a sense of movement forward, the sense of going somewhere, of maybe you might call it progress, that I think was not present in previous generations.
I'm a little nervous about drawing a sharp distinction between what we call, Generation Web or digital natives and older people, adults, because what I think that's that lets adults off the hook, and they can say, oh, as they always say, oh, this younger generation, they're, going to hell or whatever. And really, the effects of the internet, I think, are the same on adults as on younger kids and younger adults. And if you look at the statistics, it's people in their later 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s who are online much more of the time than, say, teenagers. So I would hate to have the focus on Generation Web, make it seem as though older people aren't affected by the internet, because I think they are. And I think what we see in young people, the distractedness, the inability to, read more than 2 pages at a time, is probably coming to characterize older people in every generation. And I think that's the big fear, is that we'll end up with a generation of people who are very good at using the net and very good at finding information and processing information very quickly, but don't really have any capacity for contemplativeness or for concentration or for deep engagement with information.
The French philosopher Michel Serres is saying, Gutenberg has brought the knowledge public, thanks to printing. But internet has brought the knowledge outside of ourselves, outside. So instead of feeding students with knowledge, we have to teach them how to find the knowledge from the outside world. And I can tell you, exactly as my son is saying, everything is in there, in your smartphone. So knowing how to search will become a critical skill in the future. You better know how to search, to find where the knowledge is.
So I look at my son, who's 8, and he asked me, my wife, when Michael Jackson passed away, my wife muttered something at the breakfast table about him being a criminal. And my son later asked me, right, was that true? And I said, well, you know, the dilemma of explaining the difference between accusation and proof and so forth, we're going along in this conversation, and I say essentially no one knows, right? There were these questions, nothing was ever proved, and he looked at me and said, not even Wikipedia? And I realized he'd never asked a question before, because he tends to be in the domain of facts. What's the fastest train, Dad? I have no idea, but Wikipedia does. What's the tallest building? I'll just look it up on Wikipedia. And suddenly he comes up to a question that's entirely interpretive. And clearly his worldview was a little bit shaken, because he, you know, there'd never been a question he couldn't answer before. And so you wonder how much of his relationship to the factual is being shaped by the idea that you don't need to guess or estimate or remember. If you can get your hands on a keyboard, you can find out right then.
I've made quite a lot of online friends. I don't even know what gender some of them are. They're people I chat with, either personal or direct messaging in forums and Twitter and so on. Some of whom I think are very young, and you can sort of tell they are, and who astonish me occasionally with their knowledge of literature. In fact, I was having a conversation just the other day with one who was talking to me about Evelyn Waugh. And I think she's 12, and she seems to have read every book that Evelyn Waugh ever wrote and have a very intelligent view of this great novelist. And I almost wanted to say, but how would someone who's 12 like you ever have read these books? And I think, what am I saying? Of course they might have done, and spend a lot of their time on a forum as well. It's not, the two are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty amazing to see how the next generation, I guess, evolves, if you want to call it that, because of their access to technology, but ultimately their access to information. I think education is being redefined. It's not necessarily about memorization. It's about searching for answers. You have an infinite amount of resources available to you, or information available to you. And I think people, or this next generation, I guess, are much more knowledgeable about any topic that you can think of. That also, sometimes people think of I guess, the dangers of people trying to trick individuals with deceiving them with information that's not correct, that posting rumors. But again, I think this next generation is potentially more wary, or I guess conscious of that they are making their own decisions. They understand if they're reading a post or about to click on a link, where that's going to take them. So I think everyone's now is kind of conscious of how maybe people are trying to shape their thoughts or feelings.
There are now people in their mid to getting on to advanced teens who have never known, obviously, a world without the web, in fact, there may be 20-year-olds who've never known anything but that. Have they developed strange thumbs? Do they have peculiar ways of talking and listening? Do their eyes glaze over when they have to concentrate for more than 30 seconds? No, I don't believe any of that. I'm not particularly negative or pessimistic about the social qualities, the linguistic qualities, the concentration qualities of Generation Web, as they're called. I honestly believe that if you were to go back into the 1920s and take an ordinary semi-educated 15-year-old and place him next to an ordinary semi-educated 15-year-old now, you would find the one now knows more, understands more, is more socially confident, is more aware of the rest of the world, is more able and more adept at research, may not be able to say their 9 times table as fluently or repeat amo amasamata mamasamati amant. They may not be able to do that. Is that such a great loss to an old-fashioned person like me? I'd love to think people could do both, but let's get real about it.
I think that digital is bringing a revolution in such a massive way, in an unstoppable way, that it will change forever the way we learn, also the way we work, of course, the way we interact, and it will bring a new culture of leadership.
Is this generation, are they going to be all right? Are the kids going to be doing okay? Or should we...
Kids are all right. The kids are all right. No, I absolutely believe that the possibilities and the opportunities for people to live a rich, passionate life that allows them to express themselves in all the ways that they want to, regardless of where they live geographically. I don't think it gets any better than that.
The internet's something magical. It's about that makes the TV work, I think. You can't see yet.
The internet is a large space full of things
made out of electricity. A virtual world.
Technology sort of
comes from space. Something along those lines. In the future, I think the internet will work even better.
It would charge your phone. Internet in the future will be like, internet, I want a cheeseburger delivered through my window.
With hoverboards evolving into something different. Buildings would be bent like this. I love the internet. I love it a lot. I like the internet a lot. Dear internet, you guys are so awesome.